All right, looks like we're live on Facebook. It
Perfect.
actually
All right.
it worked. It worked. Good evening, guys. How you doing?
So,
Good to see you.
sorry. Yeah,
Yeah.
we had a little bit of a technical difficulty. Amazing show today. Hey, David. Hey, Richard. We got an amazing guest. We'll intro him in a second. We got a good conversation started for all of you out there joining, slowly kind of trickling in. I'm excited. It's somebody that I've been following for a while, a project that I've been super excited to discuss. Rich, thanks for putting all this together. Today we'll be fundraising for the Wounded Heroes Project, as we have done in the past. We asked Matthew. Oh, sorry, I dropped the name. I've asked the guest who he would like to fundraise for, and he coincidentally chose this very important NGO that we've been raising for a while now. Rich, kick us off.
Well, first of all, thanks everybody for joining. If you've been following us on Facebook, either on our personal pages or on the Arach Media page, you know that our guest is a distinguished author and photographer, and he's published an amazing book that I think will give us a lot of insight as to not only the history of Armenia and the lands that we've occupied for millennia, but it'll give us a good segue into the Armenian Genocide Recognition Day that we're about ready to see for the 106th year. And so, first of all, Matthew, thank you so much for joining us. So we know that you're on the East Coast, so of course we want to be respectful of your time. And so, first of all, I want to say thanks for being here and thanks for taking the time for being a few hours ahead of us already. So, thanks for joining.
My pleasure. Thank you for the invitation.
And we have a lot of the same friends from some of the political organizations that we've been involved in, and David and Greg and I have spent time in Sacramento lobbying and doing all the work that Armenians are, we should all be doing. And so, we all have a lot of the same, many of the same friends, and so it's great to finally, connect digitally as well.
And a lot of the same objectives.
That's right.
Absolutely. Welcome to Arach Media, Matthew. Thanks so much for staying up for us with us tonight. We look forward to discussing your book with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
And as all of us showed you in the little pre-game chat that we have, obviously I've been a fan for a while, David as well, Rich as well. This is the book that we will be discussing today. This is the project that we'll be discussing. And I believe you had mentioned that, yes, everyone's a fan here, because the book is so important and because it's so well done and because the journey through the lands that you will discuss in a minute is done so eloquently and so well. And yes, David, you're the one guy of the three of us that has it signed as well.
I get to show it off. It was great spending time with you, Matthew, at the St. Vartan Armenian Church in Oakland a couple times now. So thank you so much for that.
I think we often see pictures of Armenia, and there are many beautiful pictures out there. But one of the things I found really striking about this book is just how much detail you went into and how gorgeous the landscape is and how magnificent some of these structures are. So, I don't know where you'd like to start, but maybe we could start with a little bit about your background and your history and what got you into doing this in the first place.
And the magnificence, by the way, of the magnificence of the landscapes and the architecture made this project all the more heartbreaking. Because when I look and when we look at these ancient Armenian churches and monasteries and realize that they're not respected and they're not valued by the people who have sovereignty over them today, it's heartbreaking because we know their value and we know they're priceless.
It's a great point. It's a great point, and I want to just kind of make a juxtaposition, a comparison here. I have family that is from Central Europe, right? I have some Hungarian ancestry, and my cousin married into a Slovak family, right? In Slovakia, there are dozens, if not hundreds, of Hungarian castles, and the Slovakian state renovates them and keeps them up and makes sure that adds to the flavor of the country. And that's what you mean by that is not the case with the Armenian architecture in Turkey, and right. that's a shame. That's a shame.
And what's happening today now in Artsakh is we're seeing what could be a repeat performance, in that the architectural treasures that we have in Artsakh are not valued by some of the people who have taken over the areas in which they're located. And this is something that we need to focus on today. So while we're looking at preserving what we have in Western Armenia, we also need to be focused on preserving what's ours in Artsakh.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
I agree.
we've talked a little bit
Matthew,
about the name, the Armenian Highland name. And I do want to, before we start the discussion, I just want to briefly talk about the name. The Armenian Highland is the name of the geographic region in which the Armenian nation is located. And that is the name that has been used for 3,000 years, up until about 1940. After the genocide, post-genocide, the Armenian Highland name was purged and replaced with the name Anatolia. So we Armenians refer to this land as either Western Armenia or Eastern Armenia. I don't like those names. I use them because they're convenient ways of getting across what I'm trying to say. But I don't like those names because they suggest a divide. And it's a divide that has been imposed upon us by foreign powers. We're not Eastern or Western. We're one nation. We're Armenian. I also don't like the name Historic Armenia, but I use it because it's convenient to use. I don't like historic because it's so backward looking. It suggests that, well, we used to be something. We used to be important. We're not important now. And that's not the case. And so I found that the name Armenian Highland was a very, very suitable and appropriate name for us to use to refer to all of Armenia, all of the Armenian nation on our ancestral lands.
And I appreciate that because before we started the show, I mentioned that me and you sometimes kind of on forums agree with one another on Facebook, because I too understand that the usage of the word Armenian Highlands is so important and so central to our identity, right? There's only Kilikia that's kind of off-center to the Highland area, right? But by and large, everything else that's Armenian, me being from Soviet Union, we're kind of lumped into this Caucasus section, right? Which in reality, Armenians are just one, we just kind of touch the Caucasus a little bit. Historically, we are on Armenian Highlands. Caucasus is just kind of that.
Just as the name Anatolia has been imposed upon us by one sovereign, the name Caucasus has also been imposed upon us, because we are not a Caucasus state. We used to be called the Trans-Caucasus. Well, it's only Trans-Caucasus if you're looking from the north, because that's beyond the Caucasus. We are the Armenian Highland. And I have a map that I'll put on screen in just a moment when you're ready for me to share some of the images that I have.
Right.
Absolutely. Let's we can.
Yeah, why don't we get into it? Let's do it.
Well, I was just going to say, I think it's really important, the work that you've been doing and outlining this as the Armenian Highland, because, these monuments, are reflective of what our ancestors have built. Whereas, many of the monuments that are around the world, nobody knows who built them, but we know who built ours.
Yep, absolutely.
Exactly.
We do. And when traveling throughout these lands, there is also an understanding that this is Armenian, that these are Armenian artifacts. That understanding is, in my experience, not just from the old timers who have heard stories from perhaps their parents, but also from children who would, when I'd enter a village, when children learned that I was an American Armenian, they would say, "Oh, come with us. We want to show you these Armenian things that we have." And invariably, the Armenian things that they had in their village were khachkars, or the ruins of a church. And they understood. They did understand that this was important, at least important to me and to the other Armenian Americans who I was with. So if we can see the screen that's showing now, this is the Armenian Highlands. And if you look at the area right in the center of the screen, the Armenian Highland includes what is today Artsakh and what is today the Republic of Armenia. And this is why I don't like to use the name Western or Eastern, because it's all covered under the umbrella of the Armenian Highland.
Right. That would be like saying, like, when we ask, do you speak Western Armenian or Eastern Armenian? That'd be like saying, well, do you speak Californian or do you speak Floridian?
Yeah.
Right.
So
Anyway.
So the Highland is the Armenian Highland it's a beautiful region. It averages about 900 meters. So it's a just beautiful scenery. This is Erzurum. We were talking about
Wow.
Erzurum before we went up,
Wow.
we went live. This is a typical scene that I would see in Erzurum. Notice there's no churches. Erzurum, the genocide played out differently in all the different provinces of the ancient Armenian nation. And in Erzurum was mostly wiped clean. There was very, very little left to evidence the Armenian nation in Erzurum.
Yeah. Thank you, Matthew. That was actually something I asked you, right? Obviously, I'm, saying that, my family, we decided to call our wine project Karin because this is where our roots are from. And I told you my frustration is I can't find the relevant amount of artifacts that I could then kind of utilize in the story of the wine and of the company, right? And tell the story of the land. And I am going to revert to the imagery and the topography, because as you mentioned, the genocide went the most wildly and horribly in Erzurum, from what I understand.
As I was doing research for the project, what I realized quickly was that Erzurum needed to be one of the last places I went to. And the reason for that was because I knew it was not going to be fruitful. So you can, for example, go to Van, and in a span of a few weeks in Van, you can see so many sites, document so much of our cultural treasure. But when you go to Erzurum, you could spend days and days looking, searching, and finding just a few rocks, a few pebbles. So much has been destroyed. And it's not just the buildings that were destroyed. Erzurum was one of the provinces of ancient Armenia that was purged of its population much more thoroughly than the other provinces. The people fled, the people were killed, and Erzurum has been largely whitewashed. When you travel to places like Erzurum today, it's actually a little bit risky. People often ask, well, how dangerous was this project? And there's no easy answer to that question, because it's like asking one, how dangerous is it to go to America? And there are different regions with different concerns. Erzurum is one of the high concern places.
Well, didn't you mention the same thing about Urfa as well?
Yes, Urfa would be far riskier than Erzurum because of the politics in Urfa right now, with ISIS sympathizers and ISIS members in Urfa. Erzurum is risky for a different reason. Erzurum is different because it's a conservative area that doesn't like Armenians. So they're both risky, but for different reasons.
Can I venture to guess? This is where the maybe kind of like the yoke of the Grey Wolves movement is, because I know I'm assuming Urfa kind of straddles the Kurdish Arab lands currently, Armenian always, right? But this Erzurum, it was so whitewashed that it was completely resettled by Turks, and it's and it's not a central area, as I've told David and Rich to you guys, that Eastern Armenia has been, Eastern Turkey is not a developed area, not very well developed, right? As opposed to Ankara or Istanbul or some of the Greece-facing parts of the country.
You're traveling on the back roads. You're traveling on roads where you're the only vehicle, and there's not too many homes around. It's a very sparsely populated area, especially places like Erzurum. I'm showing you an image right now on the screen of the mountains of Sasun. And this is perhaps one of the most difficult places to reach in the Armenian Highland, because it is not near any population center. And so you're traveling for hours and hours to get to a place where you're then going to hike in these mountains to reach the remains of an Armenian monastery. So this project, this project, I started it about 20 years ago, quite by accident. Wow. And the genesis of the project really was partly my grandparents. All four of my grandparents are from what I always knew as Western Armenia, so they were part of the impetus. But ironically, they also kind of deterred me from doing this project, because invariably what I heard from my grandparents was what a terrible place this was. I heard my two grandmothers survived. They actually survived the genocide and came to America as refugees. and they were old enough. One grandmother was 21 years old, 22 years old. So she knew what happened. And the other one was a teenager. She knew what happened. So this was not some place that I was told was a beautiful place that I needed to go visit and celebrate and connect with my past. It was just the opposite. It was, don't go to this horrible place. But I went. And I went because I was seeking the descendants of the refugees, seeking to understand their plight, seeking to understand what we still had, what was left. You know, this project, it wasn't like I could go to the library and find a book on Western Armenia and say, oh, I'm going to go to this place, this place, this place. There was nothing. There was no source. So I would go and I'd get these maps, and I'm thinking of my grandmothers. Here, there's my two grandmothers who survived. But I'd go to Western Armenia and I'm carrying ancient maps or photocopies or photographs of ancient maps, expecting that this is going to guide me all around the provinces that I need to explore. And it didn't work that way because the names have all been changed. In many cases, the villages don't exist anymore. And this is a map that one of my uncles, my great uncle, made in 1928 of the entire region of Western Armenia. And so I ended up spending a lot of time on the ground, stumbling around, looking for the places that should have been very easy to find. This was hostile territory. You know, I was not welcomed with open arms. Come find your old Armenian nation, come find your old homeland. No, it wasn't like that at all. The best I could hope for was indifference most of the time. In other occasions, it was outright hostility to why are you here, and you know, what are you here for? I would carry a map like this, a photocopy of this map of Van, expecting that I was going to find where my grandfather lived, because my grandfather lived in Van all the way through the defense of Van. And of course, you know, from if you've been to Van, you know this is what Van looks like today. It's sheep. It's a field and sheep and a couple of mosques. And it always interested me how all the Armenian buildings somehow deteriorated and fell apart and no longer survived, but the mosques survived. And when I was there just a couple of years ago, they were rebuilding some of the mosques in old Van. So it was ultimately a 20-year-long struggle to try to locate our homeland. And what I learned just a couple of years ago was that this struggle that I was undertaking, trying to find my roots, was not the first time somebody in my family had done that. In April of 1919, my grandfather, who had survived, published a classified advertisement in what was the Hajdanic Daily at the time. And his advertisement, just to paraphrase what it says here, is he's describing his relatives, where they were last seen, which was at Echmiadzin. He heard that they were there. And if anybody's heard about them, please contact him at this P.O. box that he opened up in New Britain, Connecticut. So 102 years later, I'm doing the same thing that my grandfather did, essentially, is trying to find the past, connect with the past, find out who we are as Armenians and what the significance of our nation is today.
Matthew, my family on my father's side is from Vaughan as well. So I can relate from that perspective. You mentioned you were met with hostilities and things. How did you navigate that? The hostilities you faced in the places you went?
Well, I kept a low profile, I dressed down, tried to blend in as much as possible, but it didn't always work because, well, there was one instance in particular where I was traveling on the Asiatic side of Istanbul. And oftentimes I was with a few people, but on this particular day, I was by myself. And after taking the ferry across onto the Asiatic side of Istanbul, I had a map. I'm looking for 4 Armenian churches that I knew were in the area. So I got a cab, and the cab driver spoke English, as so many people do over in Istanbul. And I explained where I wanted to go. And he said, those are Armenian churches. And I said, yes. He goes, why do you want to see Armenian churches? I said, well, I'm a photographer. I want to document them. And he said, yes, I understand you're a photographer, but why do you want to see Armenian churches? Are you Armenian? Mm. And so I paused for a moment. And, you know, I just said, I'm trying to keep a low profile. I'm not advertising. I'm not waving the tricolor. But he asked me a direct question. And in the moment, I needed to either admit or deny my identity. I said, yes, I'm Armenian. Now keep in mind, the Asiatic side of Istanbul is not like the European side. On this part of Istanbul, I'm in Asia. The women are wearing burqas with slits for the eyes. The men are wearing the baggy pants. This is a different world. And I don't know where I am. And the cab driver pulls over and says, get up.
Wow.
Now I'm walking on the streets. I'm this American-looking tourist by himself in the middle of nowhere. That's the kind of hostility where my life is not threatened, but I am not warmly welcomed. And to have been thrown out of a cab in the middle of a strange city in Asia was a little bit unnerving for me.
Sure.
Thank you for sharing that,
yeah,
David.
you.
Great. And I just wanted to kind of point that out for those listening to this. Understand that 106 years later, Matthew, I know you did this research not exactly last year, but a few years ago, but 100 years later, a cabbie knows that you're going to an Armenian church. What I try to explain to people is they all understand what's going on. They all understand what happened, and they understand the cover-up. Some don't, but a lot of them definitely, like the lies within the country are, you know, well, the cracks are there. And
it's institutionalized, right? It's institutionalized, right? Yeah, in a lot of ways. So thank you for sharing that.
It's institutionalized in the same way that it is institutionalized in Azerbaijan, exactly. Where we have an entire generation of people who have been taught to hate. And what the people in Turkey have been taught is that the Armenians were traitors and that they were evil and that they tried to undermine the Turkish Empire. That's what they were taught. No nuance, just a broad brush. And so this is the response that we get, but not uniformly. There was another time when I was traveling in Chunkush. I was on my way. This is a scene from Chunkush. As my van approached the village, we were stopped by military. Soldiers are carrying rifles. They order us to pull over the van. And then a man wearing a polo shirt and jeans approaches. And my experience has always been that the soldiers are carrying out the orders. And it's usually the guy in the polo shirt and the jeans who's the one who's giving the orders. So this man, he was secret police. He came over to the van and he demanded our passports and what we were doing and why we were here and what we did for a living. So we told him all the answers. And as we engaged with him, he became enraged. You're Americans, and you've come all the way across the world to Chunkush, which is what is today Eastern Turkey, to see what? To see Chunkush? And he was furious. And he took our passports and he walked away. And about 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes later, he came back, completely different demeanor, relaxed, throws our passports at us. He says, you told me you're Americans. You're Armenians. He looked at all the passports. He saw that we were all had Armenian names. He said, you're Armenians. You're here to see the rocks of your grandfathers. He goes, go, go, go. Wow. And everybody's relieved, except me. I'm sitting in the van and I'm upset now because what he just told us was we were nobodies. You're unimportant. You're just a couple of Armenians. Go on your way. You're nobody. So these are the kind of responses you get. On the one hand, you get the hostility of the cab driver. And then on the same trip, you'll encounter the indifference or the belittlement from the secret police.
Well, it seems like, you know, he used similar language to what we've heard recently when when Erdogan, speaks about the remnants of the sword or the remainders of the sword, when he talked about, the rocks from your grandparents, he's basically saying, here's the rubble from what's left.
And this is the rubble that's left. These images show this woman in both of these pictures is a descendant of a survivor. This woman's mother was 10 years old in 1915, and she survived in Chonkush, and she gave birth to this woman, who I visited a couple of times. These are people I visited in Diyarbakir, hidden Armenians.
My mother's side hails from Dikranagert, which there's the name change, right, Matthew? It was formerly Dikranagert, correct? Armenia.
Yeah. The Armenian city of Tigranakert is probably located some distance from what is today Diyarbakir.
Okay.
But it's the same region, and we can all call ourselves Tigranakirtsis. But this man here, for example, this is a man who was born with the name Talat.
Wow.
He was born Talat. And it was only when he was about 30 years old that he understood that he had an Armenian grandmother. He changed his name. He changed his name to Armen. Imagine that. He was embracing his Armenian past. So I used all kinds of maps. I told you earlier about those antique maps that I had. I also found that maps like this were much more valuable because they were maps drawn from memory of what still existed. And we did find Armenians in all of the eastern towns that we went to. It took a little bit of asking. Nobody comes up and says, yes, I'm Armenian. But you ask about their background, you ask about where they used to be from or who their grandparents were. And you often find out that, yeah, they had an Armenian grandparent sometime around 100 years ago, or a great grandparent. I found children living amid the ruins of our monasteries, places like Surp Gevork in Mush, and we made connections. We made connections with unlikely people who told us they were Turks, told us they were Kurds, and then said, well, yes, but we also have this Armenian past. And so there were some unlikely bonds. So what I'm trying to put across here is it was not a one-dimensional experience. There was some hostility of varying types. And there were also warmer moments where people said, yes, we know what happened. We understand what happened. And by the way, those expressions of understanding almost uniformly from Kurds. Almost uniformly from Kurds, people who went through, who are going through what we Armenians went through. So I do want to show you a few of the scenes. Getting access to some of the sites was often difficult. Sometimes Armenian churches would be built on top of a hill. They'd be built in a sequestered area. And those ultimately were areas that the military also liked. They had military advantages. And so there were times when we found, a couple of times, that Armenian churches were now located inside of a military base. And here we have an example of us negotiating to get access to see an Armenian church on a Turkish military base. And I show this image because it's quite a remarkable achievement. A group of Armenians from America pulls up at the front gate of a Turkish military base and says to the commander, here's the commander wearing the sidearm, we'd like to come onto your military base so we can see the Armenian church.
Wow.
And we got in.
Oh.
Wow. And Matthew, is that Khachik Muradian, the editor? Yeah. If we can share that, hopefully that's okay to say that.
Khachik's negotiation skills got us in. He spoke Turkish, fluent Turkish.
Wow.
The agreement was no photography. And so this is the only picture that I have. I adhere to the rule of no photography.
Got it. He's editor of which publication again on the East Coast?
Well, he was the editor of the Armenian Weekly while he was studying for his PhD.
Got it.
He is now at the Library of Congress, taking over the position of Armenian, the curator of the Armenian program.
Great. That's great.
He does that in his spare time, apparently. He's also a professor at Columbia.
Hmm.
So some before and after pictures I wanted to show. Sometimes I go to the site, see the ruins, and only after I do my research from the Library of Congress archives to find what those ruins used to look like. This is one of the churches that I mentioned on a military base, Sir Bartholomew, what it looks like today, or at least a couple of years ago, and what it looked like just 100 years ago, same site. And if you toggle back, you can see there's the arch over the doorway, and here's the arch on this image. You can see the same arch. Everything else has been removed.
Cultural.
In some cases, what we had 100 years ago wasn't all that different from what we have today. The Surp Marianus outside of Van didn't look like it was on all that much better condition 100 years ago. But then places like Meren, as it appeared in this antique photo from 1900, and if you look, you can see the entire, in the current picture, one entire part of the building has come down. Meren is located just across from Tallinn.
That is so tragic. I cannot tell you, being an architectural lover, the stone masonry of Meren are so important to the European development of Gothic architecture. And I'm being a nerd right now and nerding out, but like people study this cathedral, this as Armenians preserving the masonry tradition and giving it to the rest of the civilized world later on, in the year like 500, 600, 700s. Like, and for this to be inches away from the current Armenian border, it's just heartbreaking.
Well, and not to underscore the point, that this same thing is happening today in Artsakh.
Exactly.
And what I do want to make sure our listeners understand, these Armenian churches are not falling down because we didn't know how to build churches. They're falling down because they're being intentionally vandalized for the purpose of having them fall down. And that is illustrated very well in this photograph. You see an image of Sirp Arakelots, which is in the region of Mush, as it appeared in 1900. And here's how it looks today. Wow. What I want to call your attention to are those mounds of dirt that surround the base of the church. Those mounds of dirt are caused by an animal known as a human who digs up around the foundation looking for gold. And when digging up around the foundation looking for gold, it undermines the foundation. So you have somebody looking for a treasure that doesn't exist, and then the real treasure, the church, is put at risk. That's one reason so many of the churches are in bad repair. The other is they're used for quarry materials. You can see in the old picture, you have a nice smooth facade of stone covering the chapel in the front and in the back. And here the facade has been removed. It's been used. It's been reused for other purposes. So these buildings are not coming down because of gravity. They're coming down because of intentional neglect and because of misuse and because of vandalism.
I believe it's in your book, or maybe not just in your book, but there's a popular photograph of just village buildings, and you can see that the masonry of the regular everyday house or like a hut has pieces of hotchkiss in them, like haphazardly put together, meaning that this is not organized in any logical order, but you can tell that they're utilizing the bricks from the Armenian churches or the Armenian artifacts to build village buildings.
When I first started researching, I was shocked to discover that there's a home and there's an ancient khachkar that forms part of the wall of the home. As I continued my travels, I would walk past these homes and I wouldn't even blink an eye because it became so commonplace to see ancient Armenian artifacts that belong in a museum, or better yet, on the church itself, just haphazardly incorporated into somebody's home. as if it was just another stone that they could use from a quarry. This is the Hormos in the Kars region. If you look at the bell tower on the right, on the right, you can see the same bell tower there today. It's only been 100 years.
Wow.
The building stood for 1,000 years intact, but this is what happened to it in the past 100 years. And intentional neglect, intentional vandalism has destroyed Artsakh, also in the Kars region. Here you can see 4 of the churches. The oldest dates back 1,200 years. The youngest of these churches is 900 years old. This is what it looked like in 1910, and this is what it looks like today. Now, when you look at the picture today, you may ask yourself, why would there be holes in the side of the church? We went to the nearby village and we asked what happened to the churches. And the villagers told us that soldiers from a nearby military base fired munitions at the churches and blew them to smithereens. And when you hike around the mountainside here, you can see shrapnel from the churches. So this is what happened this happened in 1950s, but this is also happening today, or at risk of happening today, in Artsakh.
Absolutely.
And we have, for example, here's an image that I created of Vankasar just a few years ago. Vankasar is located north of Askaran in Artsakh, a beautiful 7th century church. And according to aerial photography today, Azeri tanks are surrounding this church. And there's some question about what the motive or what the intention is of those tanks. But we can assume that the motivation or the intentions are not benign. So this is a risk that we have today underway in Artsakh. It's a risk that I never thought, that I never expected we would have to defend what we have now in Artsakh and Armenia. And yet in places like Syunik, we can see, we really need to look no further back than 100 years ago to understand what can very well happen today in Syunik and in Artsakh. And so I hope that books like the Armenian Highland serve as a wake-up call that this has already happened and it can happen again.
Matthew, you say it so well. It is happening before our eyes. I don't think any one of us ever thought we would have to witness it and have to try to defend it and call for the international community to do something or protect it somehow. I'm struck by your photography and how well you have recreated. Maybe you could touch on it. At least to me, it looks like you've almost perfectly created the 100-year-ago photo with the current day photo or within the last several years. What can you tell us about that? And is that exactly what you did?
Well, this was seeing the sites today and then going back to the Library of Congress and seeing what it used to be was so shocking to me that I took it upon myself to try to recreate what we have today from the same vantage point of what existed 100 years ago. And this is a task that is, first of all, logistically quite difficult because you've got to find the location and use the vantage point. But that's speaking as from the point of view as a photographer. But it's more difficult as a historian because there were so many occasions when I would travel to the location. I had already done my research and I knew exactly where to go. And I'd travel to the location and there'd be nothing there to photograph.
Yeah.
There's a
Srpnarik is a perfect example on the southern shore of Lake Van.
yes,
A majestic monastery on the south shore of Van, just not too far from Gevash. And when you travel there today, there's nothing to see. There's a village. And it's the same situation with Srpgevork in the Mush region. And so,
Is yeah.
so it was a challenge as a photographer, but it was also a challenge historically just to find the places.
Sure, sure. Greg, you had a question.
And I was, yeah, my question about the Supnatic, actually, you know, Grigor Narik, very important saint in the church. We oftentimes refer to him when we're praying. I found out through your book that there's even a mosque on top of the church that he's buried in. Is that, yeah. So not only is it, and again, this is not to engage in any kind of like, you know, hints of maybe Islamophobia or anti-Turkish rhetoric, but in reality, we're living in a current state right now where there's a group within the Armenian government trying to explain to us, oh, we should try to kind of merge our, you know, geopolitics together, open up our economies. And I'm just trying to say that I'm not that naysayer, I'm not a negative person, but I'm just saying that these people want you erased. They don't want to trade with you. They don't want to do business with you. They want you gone.
I was puzzled by the number of mosques that I saw through my travels throughout the Armenian Highland. And my puzzlement became even greater when walking around the old town of Van, when I saw that mosques were being constructed in the old town of Van. And I've traveled around Van enough to know that they didn't need a mosque in an unpopulated field. Where they needed them was where the people lived. Well, the construction of these religious buildings is not being done at the grassroots level. It's not a bottom-up project. It's not the local people who want these buildings. It's being imposed from the top. This is a state policy from Ankara to create facts on the ground, to create these Muslim sites on the Armenian Highland to prove that this was always Muslim and never Armenian. So they're building the mosque at the same time that they're tearing down the church. So it's a state policy, and it's not something from the ground up.
We're likely to see that in Artsakh too.
Sorry.
I was just saying we're likely to see that in Artsakh.
It's happening. Matthew, I have a like kind of strange question. Maybe someone that traveled extensively through that region can say, do you feel that they are threatened by our existence?
No.
No? Okay.
No. You know, I've given that a lot of thought, and I think the closest analogy that I can make would probably be to the Native Americans, who we used to call American Indians.
Yeah.
There's nobody in America, there's nobody in California or New Mexico or Texas who feels threatened by indigenous Americans. They're like, oh, these people who used to be here in the 1800s, and now they're not here anymore.
If they even.
Yeah. And I think that's the way the current residents of the Armenian Highland feel about Armenians. They're these people who used to be here, kind of like Assyrians.
Right.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, I would think it's also a similar thing to, you know, the native population of Central America or South America. You know, I think that, you know, if you look at Brazil right now, you'll see that they don't care. Like Bolsonaro doesn't care about, you know, the folks who are living in the rainforest. Like, and those people represent who used to be there before the Spaniards got there. So, you know, I see these similar parallels in the northern and southern, you know, hemispheres of the Western regions here. So it's not surprising to me.
And this is why I was so upset when that secret policeman, one in the polo shirt and the jeans, dismissed us and said, go, you're only Armenians. You're just here to see the rocks of your grandfathers. Because it demonstrated
hubris,
how unimportant we were perceived as being.
For sure.
It's
like,
important.
Like you can see whatever you want, you can photograph whatever you want. You're not going to be able to do anything about it anyway.
Right.
Was the attitude that I'm picking up at least.
It's important for everyone to realize that this is cultural genocide. This is cultural erasure that we're witnessing, and that you've documented, Matthew. Thank you for doing this work.
This floored me. It floors me. It floors, like your book. Like I always, every time I want to feel inspired, every time I want to kind of understand, remember, and feel something of the Western Armenia, I always open up your book, and I highly encourage everybody to purchase one, because this is a walkthrough to a glimpse of what we had, as a way to also understand what's happening currently. Artsakh is a very special place in my heart. I'm actually a Javakhti Armenian, right? So that's where from Erzurum my folks came to Javakh, right? But Artsakh also has a very special place in my heart, because every time I would go to Armenia, I would just book a, whatever, a taxi, a minivan, like, take me to Stepanakert, because I understood how precious that land is, because it has a direct connection to what you were viewing in what we call Western Armenia. I would rather call it Armenian Highlands. Is this, if I was to guess, is this a border with Armenia? Is Armenia on the left side of this photo?
Yes.
Okay.
The Akurian River. And I am standing on the land of Ani. And I've crawled through the barbed wire fence of the frontier between Turkey and Armenia in order to approach the bank of the Akurian River. The Akurian River is a very shallow, non-navigable stream. I could have waded across from Turkey into Armenia.
To Armenia.
I could have waded across. I suppose I might not have made it all the way across, but not because of drowning, but because of other reasons. And this image just says so much to me, because we're so close to our ancestry in Ani, and yet we're a world away. And my hope is that just as we're physically able to wade across the Akurian River, that one day we'll be able to freely go across and to reach Ani and to celebrate our own culture, even though it's on the other side of a river and currently occupied by another nation.
Matthew, you were there last year. Is this correct? That was 2020?
This is 2018.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Got you. The presentations. Is the presentation 2020? Then I see the 2020 there.
Copyright 2020.
Got it. Very good.
Oh man. Oh guys, so much I can say. This has been a very emotional episode, if you ask me. Half the time I was just silent, because I just was taking it in. Like I'm in awe of the magnitude of loss. Culture, land, people, obviously, first and foremost, as a precaution to what's happening right now. Like, I just do not understand the certain arguments coming in as if like, oh, maybe certain parts of Artsakh were not Armenian, or maybe, what's happening in Sunik may or may not be front and center. And we have been screaming on this show. Every show, I always say, hey guys, what about Sunik? What about Artsakh? Because it's scary. It's scary.
Well, what I would say, first of all, I really appreciate this presentation. I really appreciate the work that you've done. I would say that there's something important about seeing the length of time many of these buildings have been standing. More than that, the idea that Armenians, we still refer to ourselves as, Urfatsis or different regional brands of Armenians, because we feel a connection there. And I think it's important for us to recognize that even though these buildings are deliberately being destroyed, even though they're deliberately being neglected, and our people in general are being oppressed, I think there's something important to acknowledge in the idea that we've survived the Greeks, we've survived the Romans, we've survived the Persians, we've survived the Ottomans, we've survived the Russians. And we can survive this too, but we have to keep vigilant. And
one of the risks, I think, that as Americans, we often have a feeling that we can compromise, and that if we give up just a little bit, we can get something else in exchange. And what I think we need to come to an understanding is that there is no appeasing the enemy. We've lost Nakhichevan, and now that has been completely whitewashed of any Armenian heritage. And we can expect that the same thing will happen piecemeal, piece by piece, of any occupied territories in Artsakh. And we should not deceive ourselves into thinking that if we simply give up Kelbajar, that we'll get to keep Stepanakert, because that's not the way it works. It's one bite at a time, one bite, one bite, one bite. And it's very important for us to keep what's ours and preserve our heritage. Places like Dadivank are in peril today.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right.
Very well said. So well said, Matthew.
Couldn't agree more. So there's a way for the people who are watching to purchase the book. David, I believe you've put up the link here at historicarmeniabook.com. So if you haven't already purchased it, I would highly suggest it. I've been on a mission to collect as many like Armenian books as possible. A friend of mine recently gifted me this book from 1896, and I am like, I would run into this house if it was on fire to get this, because it's so like immaculately kept. And I would consider this an heirloom book as well, because it's not just paper and cardboard and pictures. It's a record of a legacy, and I think we every Armenian should have one. So that's my plug, but it's because of the work that went into it that makes it that way. So I want to thank you for that.
Well said, Rich. Matthew, perhaps it's about to be 1 a.m. over there. Thank you so much for the presentation and just all of your phenomenal work on these photos and documenting all of this. As we get ready to commemorate April 24 on Saturday, perhaps you could just share some thoughts on this journey you've had and what the Highland means to us as a people. I know this is a huge thing to ask you to do, but just maybe just you could share some thoughts that you have from this overall project, and then give some more information on how people can purchase the book. And I think you even have a special commemorative option available that may even you can even purchase an autographed copy. Is that correct?
Yes.
Anything you can share as we close the
presentation?
presentation?
So the overarching understanding that I've developed during all my travels throughout the Armenian Highland is the consequences of impunity, the consequences of allowing a genocide to be committed with impunity. And there are some people who say, this was 100 years ago. We have other battles to fight. Let's move on. But actually, this is the battle, because when a crime of such an immense magnitude goes unrecognized, unpunished, has no consequences, what happens is there are real present-day consequences. And we see those in Western Armenia, in historic Armenia, in the Armenian Highland, whatever you'd like to call it, through the deliberate destruction of Armenian culture. And we're seeing it repeated again and played out again in places like Artsakh, where there's really nothing you can call it except a continuation and extension of the genocide. And so on Saturday, if the President of the United States acknowledges, as he's expected to, that this was a genocide, I think it is momentous, it is important, it is consequential for Armenians and also for the entire world, because this is not the Armenian genocide, and recognition of the genocide is not simply a matter between Turkey and Armenia. It is a matter of global significance, because a genocide against any weak nation puts all the peoples of the world at risk. So I'm hopeful for Saturday that we can move forward in advancing human rights, not just for Armenians, but for all humanity.
Very well said. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I can't thank you enough for joining us. This has been such an important show. It's definitely kind of going to be one for the books. I really, really thank Richard for
Yeah.
For getting in touch with you. Hey man, don't be modest.
Yeah.
And
Good job.
like I said, I've been a fan for a while, from a distance, of course, and then through Facebook. But now it's very nice to, see you in person. Let us know how can people purchase this? I know Richard made a plug, but what's the best way to acquire? What are some options of acquiring the book? Because this is a treasure. I'm saying this in the most honest way.
We have a website, historicarmeniabook.com. If you go to that website, you find different options for purchasing the book, whether an autographed copy or a non-autographed copy. That's the best way. If you live in Glendale, then by all means go to Abril Bookstore or to Sardarabad Bookstore and purchase from your local Armenian vendor. Those are the best way. AGBU Bookstore has the book. The Prelacy also has the book in New York City. So you have opportunities to actually go and look at the book before you buy it.
Perfect.
Website, though, choose to buy it by mail order. It's historicarmeniabook.com.
Yep, and the link is in the feed, so people can go straight to it. Yeah.
Well, Rich, take us away, man.
Yeah, thank you so much.
You're muted, Richard.
Rich might be muted.
Oh, there it is.
There we go.
Must have hit it on accident. All right. Well, Matthew, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for being so gracious. Thank you for staying up and being willing to do this, even though you're on East Coast time. I think that's just that speaks volumes about your willingness to contribute to the Armenian nation, like you've always done. And so I just wanted to offer my gratitude. So, and I look forward to connecting again at some point, hopefully in person. And let's hope it isn't something other than a plea for genocide recognition.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Have a great night.
So much.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
All right. All right. Well,
Yeah,
wow,
great job.
that was-
Rich, great job bringing him on, and just it couldn't have been more perfect timing to take a look at what we've lost in Western Armenia, to discuss Western Armenia and how it relates to today. So
yeah, I am just I look at these images and I think about it's gonna sound crazy, but you know how when you watch like Lord of the Rings or you watch like The Hobbit and you see these images of these glorious landscapes in New Zealand that are supposed to be Middle Earth, and I think about the stories that are being told and how like angelic the places are supposed to look, and then I see them personified, and then I realize that this is like my grandmother's home, or could have been our ancestors' home, and it was.
Yep.
And I just am reminded that despite what our internal dialogue may say, we are being gaslit on an international level to believe that this didn't happen, that it wasn't that important, that it wasn't a big deal, that we were traitors. Because I know my own family. My grandfather served in the Ottoman army, and they betrayed him. So I would stand up against anyone to differ on their analysis of history. I watched my mother cry. I know what happened.
Yeah, very well said. And the stories of our great grandparents, your grandmother, you mentioned them many times. I just want to say this, and then we can kind of go to the wrap up portion of what we need to do today. Obviously, we're already going overtime, but this is the episode that I was happy to go overtime because this was so good. I feel angry, right? And I feel angry at the world for being occupied with its own self-interest, for not communally caring about things like that. And I implore Armenians around the world to also take notice of other things, you know what I mean? Like whether it be the murder of the Yemen conflict that's happening right now, right? Or what happened in Syria, we were affected because so many Armenians live there, right? Israeli-Palestinian issues, Lebanon, what's going on there? We need to be cognizant of what is going on, because we must show that you cannot be indifferent. I am ashamed. What he just mentioned about the indigenous community population of America, my family, my sister in particular, will tell you, I've mentioned this once in a while. I do not know a single Native American person, and I've lived in this country for 30 years.
Greg, that's not true. That's not true. Remember, we had them
as
guests.
Okay, no, David,
yeah.
Time out, as you do time out. I've met many.
Right.
I've met many, and
right.
I've seen a few of them. And yes, I've been in bars when some white person tells me I'm a quarter Cherokee. That's not what I'm talking about.
Gotcha.
Okay?
Gotcha.
What I'm talking about is I don't have a single Native American friend. I don't know a single Native American site in the, where do we live, me and you, David? We live in the old Ohlone territory.
Right.
That's where we live.
Right.
I believe Richard is in Miwok territory, that's further out in Sacramento, but we're in the Ohlone territory. I don't know a single Ohlone site.
You're right.
Period.
You're right. And
okay?
I echo that.
Well,
right.
for sure. And, you know, to your point, Greg, I mean, I do know, I mean, one of my good friends who I consulted with when I was first ANCA, the first thing I did was try and take a meeting with her because she was working with the native tribes. And I said, okay, how do you work with your former enemy? Like, I need to get a good template, an operating template, because I don't think genocide recognition is the end of the story. That's the tip of the spear. We're the tip of the spear trying to go through and right the wrongs of, you know, multiple levels of history here. So how do you work with your former adversary? That was the first thing I did when I tried to, you know, get things going ANCA here in Sacramento. And her response to me was, well, I have no idea, because there's never been an atonement. We've never gotten to the place where the US government, let alone California, anyone has ever said, okay, yes, let's restitution, let's, you know, certainly there was some, you know, symbolic efforts here and there, but nothing of any substance, nothing of any like right now we are doing more to push through Black Lives restitution, just to have the discussion about that. But, and while that's unbelievably important and unbelievably far past time, we still haven't even we, meaning us as Americans, haven't come to terms with how this land was acquired in the first place. And so what it said to me, and I don't want to take the steam out of everybody who's trying to do advocacy work, because all of us are trying to do advocacy work for a number of reasons. But what really took the wind out of my sails was the idea that I'm asking this government to help support my efforts to recognize the Armenian genocide when this government hasn't even recognized its own genocide. And so we are in a very unique and very, you know, it's a difficult place to be in, because the Armenian nation on some level needs a powerful government to stand up and start pushing for what's right. It should be the American government, because they're the ones who keep talking about being the bastion of hope for everybody, and yet they've consistently screwed us every April 2024, consistently. And so as far as I'm concerned, if for all of my ultra lefty friends, Joe Biden has one and only one shot at getting this right, and that is on Saturday morning. And if he blows it, then he's gone to me.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what he does. Now, keep in mind, Rich, I know you know this, and we've talked about it. The Congress has recognized it in 2019. Thankfully, it took a very long time, a lot of advocacy, right? Congress did. No sitting U.S. president has formally recognized the Armenian genocide, and we'll see what Biden does on Saturday.
Yeah, well, I mean, like when we were speaking pregame, this is the beginning. It's not the end. This is the starting line. This isn't the finish line. So right. Armenian genocide recognition is just the beginning of this, because, you know, and I am 100% prepared to lose multiple friends a day by me continually blasting, because this is important. This is our life's work. This is our life's work, as far as I'm concerned.
It is, but to both of you guys, go ahead, Greg. Sorry.
No, it's okay. I just wanted to kind of pivot and refocus back into obviously what's happening on April 24th, and as it pertains to the things that we saw today, and also tie back into what's happening in Armenia and the insanity machine that I want to call the Pashinyan administration. I'm out of the gates. Everybody understands. If you don't understand where I stand on these things, I implore you to take a look at my post from today on Instagram, and you will definitely understand where I stand. I try to be level-headed, but seeing what Matthew documented, seeing what's happening right now, Vankasar, that holy site above another Tigran. By the way, Tigran, there were multiple of them, because Tigran Meds, he kind of, just like there's there's a multiple Alexandrias, because Alexander the Great established things in his name. There's a Tigran, and walls of the Tigran were discovered where Vankasar is. And now for me to hear that there's like tanks circling that, they want us erased, and people are telling me that we should kind of open up economic trades. They'll spit in our bananas before they sell it to us. They'll decimate our industry. Potatoes made in Shirak, which is Gyumri region, will be unaffordable, and you'll be buying cheap Turkish crap. Okay, so there goes that farming community. So I really, I don't understand where our nation is looking at. But I also know this: as dangerous as this man is, his support is minimal now, and the optics of him having support is all he has left. Plus, of course, obviously, a few Armenians here and there that are completely blinded by what's going on. And what's going on is that we're losing Sunik. I don't want to be an alarmist, but we've been saying this all along. You got a guy sitting in Yerevan that's about to arrest people for protesting his entry into Sunik, while he's not making a single comment of Aliyev saying we are going to take Sunik by Armenians, like it or not. So why don't you make a statement on that rather than try to arrest people that are trying to protest and give you some grievances into rocks being thrown at them and bullets flying at them from the Azeris that you just let in.
Totally agree. Totally agree.
Greg, I mean, that's a good segue if we want to get into the threats to Sunik right now. And actually, you touched on a bunch of news items that are on the list to cover tonight.
Okay, Mr. Attack, and I'm just trying to rapid fire this thing. You know what I mean? Like we got to do this.
So we have to make a decision about whether we're going to rapid fire or we're going to do the rest of the news. And I hate to do that live, but I mean, we have. Let me just count them. We've got the main topic of Aliyev is threatening Sunik. Pashinyan has been driven out of Sunik. We've got, the Armenian president will not sign the law amending the electoral code. We've got a 7th century, church that is at risk because it's being occupied and surrounded by tanks. We've got POWs that are missing due to war. We've got, the upcoming Armenian Genocide Day on Saturday, and we've got articles about Biden and Schiff. Not to mention, we've got an event this Saturday, and then we've got some action items. So the question is, do we want to dive into it, or we want to, let everybody know what's what?
I think you did a great job, first of all, if we're doing this live. I think you did a great job of summarizing this. First and foremost, I think the situation in Sunik is very important. David, what's your take, and how do you?
Yeah, no, and thank you for everybody that's watching and sticking with us. It's a longer episode tonight, but we got a lot to cover, and we had a really wonderful guest. And so, look, why don't we touch on the areas that Greg touched on a moment ago, and Matthew touched on. Matthew touched on the 7th century church, and we talked about the genocide. Obviously, we talked about the threat to Sunik. Why don't we can share the links to the POWs and the president, and we can rapid fire perhaps through these other.
Before we do, I want to touch on some of the folks that have commented in the feed.
Yes.
First of all, John, forgive me for not being able to get to your question about Aintab earlier. we'll see what we can do with Matthew.
Yeah, I think we could follow up with him, right, Rich? We can get those answered and get back to people, I think, right?
I think so. And Anush, the book is absolutely amazing. And if you haven't already picked it up, which I'm assuming you have if you've seen it, please do. And Carol, thank you. It's, this is a group effort. David and I have been putting together some of these links. Greg has been, this is a three-way effort, and we're constantly at this. There isn't a day that goes by that one of us isn't doing something or multiple things about this. And we don't ask for money. We're not trying to get rich off of this. All we are trying to do is disseminate the news and try and create engaging content for everybody. Valina said that Ronald Reagan, while in office, actually used the term genocide. Yes, he did.
He did, but it was a kind of a backhanded way, and it was in a Holocaust remembrance speech.
Yeah.
It was to the effect that we could post it, like the genocide of the Armenians before it, the Holocaust, something like that. It was not official recognition.
So
He
this
did use the word
does bring me to something. This, this Ronald Reagan quote does explain why a lot of Armenians are Republicans. And I'm not going to get into Republican versus Democrat because I think this is we're kind of party agnostic here. At least I'd like to think we are.
Definitely
right.
are. Definitely.
But I will say this: I think that anything that has to. I am tired of Armenians jumping like I hate to say it this way, but it's like someone's got a dog treat and we're just happy to get something whenever someone says something about Armenians. And every April 24th, it's the same thing. Is he going to recognize a genocide? Well, the bigger question is, why the hell have they not? Why is it taking so long? Oh, I know, because Turks are more important than Armenians when it comes to the geopolitics. And, right now, it just seems that Armenian lives don't matter. And it's I'm tired of us getting all wound up anytime we see someone Armenian in the news, or we see someone that's Armenian on a screen. Not because I don't feel the same sort of joy that we've survived, but I'd like to get to a place where we are normalized and where this isn't the biggest thing that we almost got wiped off the planet. And
right.
So I'm glad that Reagan used the term, but I wish that I would have much rather him had the balls to actually make good policy on it.
Right. Keep in mind his speechwriter was Armenian.
Yeah. Well,
it was Armenian, so that helped as well.
Is it too much to ask to get some sort of justice? I mean, really. So I hope Biden does it. I doubt he will, but I hope he does. And I don't want to hope because I feel like it's dangerous.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. We'll know. We'll know at some point, right? We'll know Saturday.
Yeah.
So
which one do we want to cover first, and how?
Sunik, right? Sunik, let's do it. Let's touch on Sunik.
The threatening of it, or being driven out.
The
one
threat,
to
right?
two. Let's go with the threat. So the threat was a statement by Aliyev.
Right.
So for those that don't understand,
Greg, I'll read his quote. If it's okay with you, I'll read his quote.
Yeah, please read his quote. Yeah.
This is Aliyev on state Azerbaijani TV. The creation of the Zangezur, which is Sunik province of Armenia, the creation of the Zangezur corridor fully meets our national, historical, and future interests. National historical, notice he says historical. We will be implementing the Zangezur corridor whether Armenia wants it or not. If Armenia wants to, we will solve this issue more easily. If it does not, we will solve it by force. There's his threat. And this has been ongoing now, and we've been talking about the threats to Sunik. Greg, take it away.
Yeah, so Aliyev was seen quoted in a video conference. There he is, this guy that I wish many bad things on, stating that so it's obviously there's this freeway that's being built through Armenia. I don't know why it can't be through Iran. Yeah, no.
Remember, it was part of the November 9 agreements. Remember that.
Yes, the agreements that if tomorrow somehow Pashinyan dies, we can start reneging on. But since the traitor is in the chair, we will never have that option or opportunity. So yes, one of the points was to get the connection between Nakhichevan and Azerbaijan proper, whatever you want to call that, or former Artsakh lands. connected, so that there could be a revival to the area, unblocking the economic routes, which nobody but Turkey and Azerbaijan would benefit from. Anyways, he understands that the Armenian barometer for hatred to Pashinyan is rising, and I was making these egregious statements that Aliyev is on what I'm talking about, that we will take it by force. There is a linkage, a historic linkage between Syunik and Artsakh. It's almost kind of like one and the same, okay? So if he has territorial claim to one, he feels he has claim to the other.
Right.
By the way, Yerevan is also on his radar, and this is what I want to tell to every Davajanakan Armenian that thinks that, oh, Artsakh is okay, Syunik is okay, as long as Yerevan. No, dude, once Syunik is gone, Yerevan's next, and so is Gyumri and Lake Sevan as well, and you'll be, I don't know, mostly just drinking lattes in LA from now until infinity.
Right.
What's
Now,
happening
Greg,
now is the people of Syunik were seeing a visit of Pashinyan coming, right, to essentially signal to his own folks that he's got everything under control, his little minute base that needs to see his activity or whatever the hell he does, his movements from place to place, photo ops or whatnot. And people in Syunik who see the everyday danger, who see the stones throwing by Azeris, because the roads are now in lowlands, whereas the high positions are taken up by Azeri soldiers, which, by the way, the ombudsman that toured with Armen Sarkisian, the president of Armenia, Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan, President Armen Sarkisian, try to educate while I talk, said that there needs to be a buffer zone created between Syunik and whatever the hell we gave freely to them.
Zone.
Yeah,
Security zone,
because because Azerbaijan is pulling its military too close to Syunik, like on top of it, and this is every military strategist's worst nightmare of what's happening now. Even if we get rid of Pashinyan, the road is so steep right now, and the battle is so uphill.
Right, and they're firing into the villages, right, Greg? They're firing into the
villages.
villages.
David, you and I have been at this for years now. What have they been doing, Tavush? Notice how it stopped all of a sudden? Now that everything's like focused on Artsakh and dismantling of Syunik and Armenia proper, there hasn't been anything. And by the way, Tavush can restart as well. You know what I mean? Like any day. Right. The northern porous villages and the borderlands. Well, Syunik is now just exactly the same way. And if we lose this link to Iran, our sovereignty is gone, guys. Even if there is like this little circular Armenia. So any Armenian supporting Pashinyan, I don't care if you hate Kocharan, Serge Sarkisian, you don't like the church, you love the church, you're a pagan, you know, I don't know whatever. If you do not think soberly about what's going on right now, you might as well just hand in your Armenian card, please, and just walk away.
Greg, I'll add one thing, and then let's use this to segue into what you touched on a moment ago earlier as well about the protests that Pashinyan faced. Pashinyan visited a working visit related to security of Syunik. He did make a comment about Aliyev's statement. He said, with such provocative statements, Azerbaijan's leadership wants to walk away from our understandings, heightening tensions in the region to continue blockading Armenia.
Pause right there.
Is that a strong enough statement? No.
No. I'm gonna like implore at some point that we stop using this news source as a way to showcase things, because that's State Department Radio Free Armenia. I do not like them. But what I'm trying to say is, just like what Richard just now said, that when Reagan mentioned something about the genocide, it was kind of in a by the way comment. No, what you need from a leader is saying, today, Ilham Aliyev, the president of Azerbaijan, said, bam, 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 bam. We, the Republic of Armenia, wholeheartedly refute any claim to blah, 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 blah. Like, do I need to like spell that out? You know what I mean? Like, do I need, like, this is how a statesman, a diplomat, a leader of a, what do you call it, of a country operates. He was in a conversation saying that, yes, what Aliyev is doing is kind of shaking up the core foundation of an already horrible plan.
Right. No, look, and it's not strong enough, right? The foreign ministry also put something out saying the statements seriously undermine regional peace and stability. that we're gonna continue to work with Russia, as well as other partners that are interested in peace in the region. So,
Yeah, so let's put this in another context for a second. I mean, if a North Korean leader says, "Yo, we want to nuke California," we sanction them. If Russia, without saying so, says, or if the Americans decide, "Oh well, Russia's messed with our elections, we're going to sanction them." Okay, well, this guy says he wants to wipe out Armenia. Who cares? Right?
Right.
I mean, why? I'm not saying who cares as in I believe him. I'm saying, like, why the hell why don't people care? And why don't they believe him?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Why don't we touch on what happened to Pashinyan when he was there? He had to leave early. He was driven out.
Well, he was driven out. He didn't have to leave early. He had to literally turn around. He was forced out. He didn't get to. Yeah, he was forced out. And what's happening now is even worse. You will see, and this is, I've said so many things about the guy. I'm going to say another thing. He is a populist, and inside of a populist lives a tyrant. If you think getting rid of him is going to be easy, you got, another thing coming, my friends, because this guy is going to claw his way to the very last bit of being able to stay in power because he is a rat. Okay. Right. And the reason why I'm saying that is that look at what he's saying. You know what he's doing right now? He's not addressing Aliyev. He's not telling the military to, hey guys, we should pull the military closer to Sunik. We should start talking to Russia about pulling their military. There's dangerous times. No, he's in fact right now sending his police, a state police, to arrest every person that blocked the road. That's his number one priority in post-war Armenia.
Even a little bit, just to add one detail, Greg, you're right. He specifically is saying to go arrest the people that called him a traitor. There were people yelling at him, get out, cursing at him, saying, calling him Nicole Turk, and calling him a traitor, Nicole the traitor. So leave, get out of here. So yes.
Because here's why.
Yeah.
The enemy is not just at the gate. It's occupying the land.
I know, man. I know. This is the church that Matthew was mentioning, right, guys? So, Greg, what's the name of this church and what's the situation? And we're going to show the satellite image.
Vankasar. And for the longest time, that church did not have that cross on it because, what do you call it? There was a symbolic reason where the Artsakh held it off, and then they graciously put the cross on there to commemorate a certain date, right? And that literally happened a year or so ago.
Yeah.
And now there are tanks circling it.
Well, here's the thing. This is the satellite image. You could tell, like we talked about in the pregame, right? You could tell Matthew is very in tune with what's going on in the news, right? He could have joined our show with us. There it is. Thank you, Rich. This is the satellite image he was referring to that's showing what you were just saying, Greg. Go ahead. Sorry.
I mean, it doesn't look like they're going to be, they're not going to like rehabilitate the place. It's not like they've got a bunch of guys from HGTV who are going to like rehab the place. They're going to raise it. Anyway, go ahead, Greg. Sorry.
And this is, again, back to the rage and anger. Nobody cares. And until that time, David, I really don't care about the nice people of Azerbaijan and Turkey. Sorry, I just don't. Completely do not. I don't have the capacity.
I get it.
Because I don't exactly see an uproar of, hey guys, leave the Armenian monuments alone. There's not as a matter of fact, I saw children go to this horrendous museum. Okay, so like let's stop about the nice people everywhere shit.
Okay, look, all right. We're all taking each other out of context. I was referring to the use of the slur. That's all I was referring to. I get it. I get it, guys. I get it.
Do you know what they call what's a negative slur in Turkey?
Go for it, man. What is it?
Ermeni. It's if you say somebody's an Armenian, it's a slur.
Yeah. So I believe
it. Anyways, I guess let's focus on the Saturday. What's happening? I believe it's very important. It's very important for us, like what Matthew said. Like everyone, it's not 100 years, 106 years ago. I would want to say if it's still an issue that's non-resolved 300 years ago, our great grandkids are what do you call it? Are meeting up and are demanding justice. So yes, on Saturday we urge everybody look up the places in your areas that you can visit and the events that you can support, as the three of us will be at the Mount Davidson Cross, which is our event here in the Bay Area. And we urge everybody, socially distant, with masks, come out and support this very, very important commemoration.
Yeah, and we'll show the flyer to that in a second. There were a couple breaking, if you will, reports today that are echoing the Ian Bremmer report from a few weeks back, saying that Biden is preparing to recognize the genocide on Saturday. Of course, until he does on Saturday, that's when we'll be able to really see the proof. So as Wall Street Journal and New York Times now reporting on it, those have also been shared on our page. And here they are, and they're on the feed as well. Thank you, Rich. And yes, a letter with more than 100 signatures of representatives signed this letter that the Armenian Caucus put forth. The Schiff spearheaded this letter calling on Biden to recognize Armenian genocide, and he spoke about it on the House floor on Tuesday, I believe, yesterday. So
yeah, I would encourage everybody to watch that video. Schiff has been a steadfast supporter of Armenian issues.
Absolutely.
For as long as I can remember. So, and you know, he everything that he is aligned with are part of my value systems, and it just you know, I can't say enough good things about Adam Schiff and the way he does things. So I'm glad that he spoke. So please watch the video. I'm going to post up the link in a second.
Yeah, and I'm going to put the link to the actual congressional letter in the feed as well. The Assembly has shared it. I'll put it there. But yes, thank you everybody that stayed on. We have a bunch of people that have stayed on this whole time. So thank you for everybody.
David, take us away. Let's wrap with let's meet at the cross, right?
Yeah, so I'm excited. Maybe excited is the wrong word. I'm looking forward to being there with both of you guys. I believe that'll be the plan on Saturday. Rich, it'll be great to welcome you to Mount Davidson Cross. Have you been there before, Rich?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry, man. I didn't know if you had been or not. So
I was there with you before, Arach.
Oh my God, man! I'm sorry. It's all a mixed match in my head. I apologize, man.
I want to actually say, like, I don't want to like date Richard, but maybe Richard was there before me and you were there.
No.
It could be.
No, it's a climb up.
Yeah, you know. 1 p.m. on Saturday at the cross. We'll share a link with information on that. So there'll be guest speakers. It is going to be emceed by Elisa Holmonian, who will also be a guest on this show at some point. And she is an anchor on Cron 4 News here in the Bay Area. The keynote speaker is Maral Atala. She's a distinguished lecturer at Humboldt State University. So it's going to be a very moving program. And it'll be at Mount Davidson Cross at 1 p.m. on Saturday.
And from what we know as locals, please wear layers. It can be freezing, but oftentimes it's not.
Well, isn't it? It's the highest point in San Francisco, right?
Yep. It is the highest point in San Francisco.
Yes, it is.
And there's a very interesting history on the cross itself, and it's worth looking at because it was originally built to welcome in Easter Sunday for the sunrise, and then eventually, I think it was in the 90s, some groups decided that the city shouldn't own the park.
1997. Yeah, 1997. The Armenian community bought it because it was a conflict of interest, supposedly. An official Turkey called city representatives to try to prevent that. And
dude, this is what I'm telling you. We got to keep pushing the genocide recognition because these fools are constantly chasing every corner of the world. And genocide recognition, screw you, buddy.
Yep, and there it is. There's the flyer for the event. Thank you for sharing that, Rich. And the link is up to the Facebook page on our feed. So, in terms of action items, the letter that we were encouraging people to ask your representative to sign that was going to go to Biden, that has already been sent today. That was the video that Schiff is speaking about. So now the focus right now is POWs, making sure that they are returned safely, and ensuring robust humanitarian aid for Armenia and Artsakh in fiscal year 2022 appropriations. So all that is on our link tree, as we've talked about many times. So
I'll put
right.
the link.
Thank you guys. I will see you on Saturday.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. You know what?
likewise.
Parting shot. If you haven't been vaccinated, please go get vaccinated. Just know that the cases in Armenia are rising. So if you have family there, tell them to get vaccinated because they're just starting. And they really need it because, you know,
Yeah.
they need to be vaccinated.
It's definitely too high of a transmission. And Artsakh had their first vaccination as well, so that they're starting to roll out there. Yeah.
All right.
And you know, for those of you that think that obviously we're Russian versus the AstraZeneca and all that, it has been duly noted by all sorts of people, Dr. Fauci included, that even the Sputnik 5 vaccine is actually very robust against this disease. So
well, yeah, I mean,
doesn't matter what you get.
Nothing's 100%. To all those people, I've literally gotten into discussions with people who were like, well, they said that you're gonna still have to wear a mask and it may not be perfect. Well, what do you expect? They're trying to save humanity right now. And furthermore, like, any of you guys have polio? No, neither do I. And I didn't. And we're not going to have it both. Why? Because we got inoculated when we were like 2 or 3. Okay. So, if you want to go back and go deconstruct our own histories and check out your medical records from when you were 4 and see if, what was in that particular thing that you got given, you might find some stuff. There's foods that you're eating today that you can't pronounce. So don't tell me that you're scared about something that's in the vaccine. It's just garbage to me. Just get it, please. Okay, so right now
he does get passionate, folks. He definitely does.
Yeah, he does. So do you, Greg. I can too. I think that we're grateful for our viewers for joining us on this journey. So yeah.
The last thing I would say is we are currently still going to be on Wednesdays. We are considering a move to Thursdays. We will let you know. We think that's a pretty good opportunity to begin the weekend. So I don't know. We will let you know. But for now,
that could be as early as May, right, Rich and Greg? That could be as early as May.
And we have some very interesting town hall ideas that we want to kind of also host. So stay tuned.
Yes,
there's lots of cool things that this
high-powered guests like tonight with Matthew. Great job, Rich, bringing him in. We have high-powered guests we're lining up and high-powered conversations. Next week, we have Amasya Zagarian from the Halo Trust in Washington, D.C. Halo Trust has been monumental in terms of demining Artsakh, and the task is very large in Artsakh still today for demining. So he'll be speaking about that next Wednesday.
If you have not already subscribed to us on YouTube, please do it. We're going to post the link shortly. And very soon we will be going platform agnostic, which means we'll be broadcasting on multiple platforms at the same time. So you'll be able to keep watching us here on Facebook, but you'll also be able to see us on YouTube and potentially others. So stay tuned to that. Meanwhile, I would also encourage you to take a look through the link tree that we put up, and that way you'll have plenty of links so you can stay engaged. And we hope to see you again next week.
Yeah, we hope to see all locals at the cross on Saturday.
Yeah. All right, come say hi.
All right. We might go live from there, right, guys? We might
wear
just
a mask.
do that.
Wear a mask.
I'll wear a mask. We might just go live.
I just had an idea.
I mean, not a whole helmet or anything, but
No.
just,
But you know what? We might have a lot to talk about on April 24 live from the cross. So let's we'll see how that goes.
Okay.
Yeah. Good night, guys.
David, take your selfie stick.
I got one.